Jai Hind, Jai Bharat, and welcome to Dev Talks. This is Adi. I have someone really special with me all the way from Israel, Miss Nina Slama. She's, if I may, a geopolitical expert in terms of India-Israel relations. I've spoken to her long time ago when I started my channel, and I've been reading what she's written for a while now. She's been in contact with a lot of Indian diplomats and Indian basically establishment which is dealing with the Israel relations. And with the current crisis, I thought who better to get on board to give us an insight from the ground as to what is happening. So, Nina, first and foremost, welcome to the show. I hope everybody is safe and sound uh, around you, your family and friends. Uh, and from on behalf of the Dev Talks community, might just like to place on record our sincere regret and absolute standing with you at this time of crisis, because it's something that nobody ever expected to happen. And I think if there is one country in the world apart from Israel who understands the wrath of terrorism, is India. So we stand with you at this time of crisis. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you so much, Adi. It is so heartwarming to see the unequivocal support from our brothers and sisters in India. I can tell you that from on a personal note, I'm getting a lot of messages and calls that are supporting Israel and its cause, and it is very heartwarming in this difficult time. Thank you.
Thank you. There are these heart wrenching stories coming out of the first day of the attack on the 7th of October, 2023. It was a Saturday morning, and today now slow and steady reports are coming out about what actually happened there. We know to an extent what happened, but these individual reports are heart wrenching. How is it being perceived within the country of Israel, within the people?
So, as you mentioned, Adi, it was an unprecedented attack that was imposed on Israel on October 7th. Why is it an unprecedented attack? Because we're talking about the combat attack from through the air, the sea, and the ground towards towns of Israel. It was the Hamas terrorist organization infiltrated our territory and cleansed the towns down. We're talking about more than 22 towns in Israel that were cleansed. People, civilians, were slaughtered, massacred, brutally injured, and beheaded by the Hamas terrorist organization. They went from house to house in order to make sure that nobody will be able to come out of these houses alive. They burned down houses when people were residing there alive. We're talking about the genocide that was afflicted toward the Jewish and Israelis living nearby the Gaza Strip. Not only that, the Hamas terrorist organizations also take captive many people. We're talking about more than 200 people. We're talking about men, women, children, babies, and elderly people that were kidnapped forcefully and brutally to the Gaza Strip. It was unprecedented until now and since the establishment of the Jewish state as an independent country. Since the Holocaust, we didn't lost as so much and as many as civilians uh, in one attack in one morning. And as you mentioned, Adi, this attack were taking place on a Saturday morning, which is Shabbat. Shabbat is the Jewish day of rest. It was also the Jewish festival of Simchat Torah that was also supposed to be celebrated, an auspicious day of joy and happiness, all families coming together in order to celebrate the Torah, which is our sacred book, and finishing a whole cycle of reading the Torah from Shabbat to Shabbat during the Jewish year. So we're talking about the tragic and massacre that was imposed of our civilians and also soldiers that are employed in the area. Surprisingly, and we are very horrified, very shocked. We didn't expect that such a scale of attack will be imposed on our civilians and soldiers. But I can assure you, Adi, that the people of Israel is resilient. The people of Israel is strong and united, and Israel shall prevail.
Absolutely, and there's just no question about it. I don't think there is anything else the world will look at from Israel at this moment. There is also the factor that today there's a whole lot of negotiations which are taking place. Antony Blinken was flying around trying to get aid into Gaza. Get I'm sure it's some sort of a settlement to ensure that some hostages do come out and this and that. Uh, which brings me to my next question: what is happening with the hostages? Do we have confirmation of how many people are actually stuck there? What are the conditions? Is there any communications or negotiations happening at the moment to get them released?
So we know that the Israeli government, which is right now an emergency government comprised by all parties in Israel from the coalition and the opposition, are trying to do their best in order to bring to the release of the captives in the Gaza Strip. Now, we're talking about 203 for now of captives people. We do not know exactly what is their condition, whether they are dead, alive, injured, or critically injured for now. We're talking about also captives that are coming from more than 30 other countries in the world, also from Nepal, Thailand, Europe, Latin America, and so forth. Becoming this, bringing this conflict to have a more international aspect, and this is why also many leaders, we see many leaders coming to Israel and expressing their support to the Israeli government because their own citizens were also victims of these attacks, whether they were brutally murdered, injured in Israel, but also captive in the Gaza Strip. So for now, Israel is doing everything in its power to bring to the release of these captives, but it will be very difficult to bring to their release because Hamas terrorist organization is keeping them as human shields. So the Israeli defense forces will be very reluctant to strike or to combat these terrorists and bring them down, but also as a pawn in a psychological war that will be also promoted in the future of in the coming days and weeks of this war. Uh, just releasing footages and pictures of all the captives in order to bring pressure to the Israeli government and other leaders in order to allow Hamas to continue its massacre and its terrorist attacks towards civilians and soldiers of Israel.
What's terrible is that I and getting into a little bit of the politics at this moment is that we've seen the left in the world today bringing up excuses like, oh, this is an open air prison, oh, this is that, this is this, there's Israel is occupying this area and this. The whole narrative of the war, the what atrocities took place, how does Israel even look at this? How do the people, what do the people say when they read these kind of leftist liberalist sort of comments coming out from the West? I mean, it's amazing that most of these comments are coming out from the West and not from the Middle East, the predominant Muslim world. This is coming out from the West. So how do Israelis actually feel when they see something like that? For us, especially when we see it, because this is the same kind of narrative that is spun around us, our blood boils.
So what is important to understand that these attacks were targeted not only Israel but humanity as a whole. the all civilized world, the very basic values of humanity. This is why Israel is getting such an unequivocal support from the entire international community. And this is what is important to understand. Because when you are siding with Israel, you are not siding only with the Jewish state, but also with civilization, with humanity. The crimes that were inflicted on the Jewish state were crimes against humanity and shall be
Absolutely.
dealt as you know. So when we're hearing this kind of comments from different countries in the world, they should understand that they also their democratic values and their moral values were also attacked in this war, and this is why they have to support Israel. I can tell you, Adi, that as an Israeli, I'm also very sad to see all the civilian casualties from the Gaza Strip because they are also captives all of the Hamas terrorist organization ruled there. And why? Because they are used as human shields. They are used as as pawn in their terrorist aspirations and
Yeah.
in the region and against Israel as well. We have to understand that when Hamas is deploying rockets, they're doing it not through bases or other combat areas that they are conducting the war with Israel, but in civil infrastructures. We're talking about schools, about hospitals, about houses of civilians, of non-involved people, in order to get international support when these people will get hurt, whether they will be killed by an airstrike or killed by their own rockets. We saw it when the hospital in Gaza was struck directly by a rocket that was supposed to be fired to the territory of Israel. And this is what is so tragic about Hamas. They are not only targeting Israel, but their own population. They are not taking care of their population. They do not want to get into a peace process with Israel, as many people believe in Western countries and other countries in the world. They are declaring that they want to bring to the total destruction of Israel. They are not only declaring it, but it is also written in the
In the
charter.
charter.
In
Hmm.
the charter, we're talking about a terrorist organization who does not value human life. And this is very clear from all sides. They're ready to sacrifice their own population in order to get their goals. And this is what is so tragic about it. When people are claiming that the world should free Palestine, I would say that they should free Palestine from the Hamas terrorist organization,
Hmm.
because this is exactly what they need to do, to free them from the atrocities that are inflicted not only towards Israel but towards their own population. Now we have to understand that there are many countries that are funding and giving humanitarian aid to the Gaza Strip. But sadly and tragically, all these investments are going directly to the hands of the Hamas terrorist organizations. There was one person from an Arab country who said that if all the investments that go to the Gaza Strip would have go to, infrastructures and development, there could be, streets and roads of gold that could be built in the Gaza Strip because of the thousands of millions of dollars that were invested in the Gaza Strip. But sadly, when there are some development, programs that are intended to develop the Gaza Strip and bring to a certain kind of decent life for the population, they are using, for instance, water pipe in order to build with them rockets. They are building tunnels in order to combat Israel and attack Israel in malicious ways. each and every, tunnel costs about $3 million. And we know
Wow.
for now that there are more than 30 tunnels in the Gaza Strip. So if we multiply, 30 times 3, we already have a budget of $90 million just talking about the tunnels, right? That will be there. Instead of building schools, instead of building, other infrastructures that could bring to the prosperity of the Gaza Strip. So when people are condemning Israel, they're condemning also the Gaza, the civilians in Gaza, not only Israel, because they're supporting a terrorist organization who is targeting humans and using them as human shields. And it doesn't matter from which side they are.
Absolutely correct. And this whole barbarism of human shields, we saw this in Ukraine as well. It's terrible. I mean, you want to fight a uniformed soldier. Don't fight children and 90-year-old Holocaust survivors, and you know, it's difficult to even describe that. I wonder what people who've lost their families would be going through right now. I want to ask you about the Arab nations. The overt reactions from the Arab nations is pretty much against Israel overtly, but we also see that UAE, Bahrain have come out in support of Israel. Saudi Arabia's foreign minister gave a statement that condemned the excesses or the alleged excesses of Israel within the Gaza in terms of bombings and stuff like that and the civilian casualties. But he also condemned the Hamas in, in what he did, in what they did in Israel on the 7th of October. How do you, sitting on the ground there, see the reactions from the Arabs, the Middle East, the Muslim nations? What is your opinion as to what is happening? Are they trying to pacify their populations by not openly coming in support of Israel, or what is actually happening on the ground?
So what I can tell you, Adi, is that in recent years, many Arab countries came to the conclusion that Israel is not part of many problems that are taking place in West Asia,
Mm.
but part of the solution to many challenges here in this region. And Israel is always ready to extend its hand to peace. We saw it most recently in 2020 when Israel signed the Abraham Accords with the UAE, Bahrain, Sudan, and Morocco. We have to understand that many Arab countries today would like to bring stability, prosperity, and develop their countries in order to uh, allow their citizens to have a decent life. This is why they are also collaborating with other countries in the world, such as India. We see that following the Abraham Accords, there were many alliances that were established, not only in the region but also in other regional and international forums.
Yeah, yeah.
We're talking, for instance, about the I2U2 alliance, comprised by India, Israel, the UAE, and the US. These countries and other countries in the region would like to bring, to bring for to focus more on other issues that are a significant part of the national interests of the many countries today. We are talking about healthcare, about climate change, food security, agriculture, making sure that their population will be able to live a decent life, to bring for development. But sadly, there are state and non-state actors who they just see these kind of alliances that are, established in the region, and they are not colliding with their own aspiration, hegemonic and extremist aspirations in the region. I'm talking, for instance, about Iran, about Hezbollah, which is a proxy of Iran in Lebanon, about Hamas, and the jihadi Islam in the Gaza Strip that are also very much, proxies of Hamas, also the Houthis in Yemen. So we see that this kind of collaboration threatens the aspirations of Hamas and Iran and other countries in the region. And this is why they try to slow down and maybe diminish these kind of developments and collaborations between the countries that we mentioned, including Israel and India. They don't want to bring to stability in the region because it doesn't, it doesn't go side by side with their own interests, their extremist interests, because they are losing ground. Many countries would like to bring, to have stability, especially after, different dynamics that were part of West Asia, such as, in North Africa, such as the Arab Spring, the COVID-19 that bring many suffering and many, problems in many countries and challenges in many countries. Even Lebanon, the government in Lebanon is really do not want to get involved in any war with Israel because they have their own domestic and challenges and economic challenges. They do not want to have anything to do with Israel right now because they have to focus on their own issues. But sadly, there is the Hezbollah there who have other aspirations. What is said that what is said is that Iran is not ready to shed any of its own blood, but doing
Mm.
it by keeping captive, its proxies in the region. They do not care about Palestinian lives or about Lebanese lives, as long as it goes side by side with their own interest and aspiration in the region.
It's
So this
terrible.
is
I'd
what is,
I'd actually
yes.
add another country, which we've done reports and we have enough circumstantial evidence to say that this one country has supported this attack, and as a matter of fact, is giving diplomatic heft to this particular attack, and that is China. We've seen the reaction from China, which is, I mean, it's taken a side of. They're trying to say Palestine, but we know that they are taking the side of the Hamas in terms of, no, 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 it's all Israel's fault. No, 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 this is. I mean, you see the foreign minister's his speech yesterday. It was mind-boggling. If he has the courage at this point of time to actually say that Israel is the responsible party here. It's
So
amazing. People don't
yeah.
understand the geography of this area and the history of this area. Uh, I know Israel has very close relations with China. There's a huge amount of trade, the BRI, and this and that. Do you think there is some amount of rethink which is happening in terms of where are we? Because China is closely associated with Iran, and we know what these guys are up to.
You know that what is interesting about international politics is that the very essence of geopolitical competition is that we see different coalitions of countries coming together in order to promote a certain idea, issue, or interest. And I can tell you, Adi, that India, for instance, have a very unique approach to foreign affairs. I'm talking about the approach of multi-alignment and de-hyphenating policy, de-hyphenated policy, which means that India is collaborating separately with each and every country in the world in order to collaborate in different issues and bring and make sure that this country will be able to help India in different, engagements in order to bring forth prosperity and achieve some, grab some opportunities and challenges that these countries can come together and address them together. Now, this is the same for Israel and for any country in the world.
Yeah.
Israel has many, relations with many countries, and this war will bring for a change of dynamics between, these coalitions that are forged not only in the region but also in the international arena as well. We don't know exactly what the future holds, right? Because we are not prophets. But I can assure you that Israel knows exactly which countries are have its back and which countries can undermine their its own national and security interests, not only in the region but in the world. So what we are focusing right now in Israel
Mhm.
is to collaborating closely with our allies. We saw that different leaders from the world came to Israel very recently in order to express their support to the Jewish state, but also to find ways in order to stabilize the situation. I'm talking about US President Joe Biden, UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, and other leaders that are, and also the Chancellor of Germany.
Germany. Hmm.
Yes, that was here as well. And I'm sure that other leaders will come to Israel or express and help Israel in this war. We also saw that the U.S. sent their fleet, their aircraft fleets, two aircraft fleets to the region in order to deter some, countries, state and non-state actors, from getting involved in this war, and making sure that if they will do so, the US will be there in order to address their threats side by side with Israel and other, countries. So for now, we are focusing on stabilizing the situation, bringing back the security to our borders, and do it, of course, with allies and friends of Israel.
It's amazing. I mean, at a time like this, yeah, you can play politics when you want to. There's no problem. But why bring in politics in a time? Uh, First of all, I mean, the Chinese and a lot of countries in the world, hypocritical countries, I call them, they remained quiet for 2 days. On the 9th and 10th, after finishing their Sunday holiday, they came out and gave statements, which is really sad. Just putting out a statement doesn't really, I mean, I'll say this about our country as well. India does support a two-state solution. We've spoken about Palestine. We've got independent relations with Palestine. But the first concern that was expressed by the government, and I'm damn proud of it, is support to the people of Israel. Forget the government, forget anything else, because the people have gone through the terrorist attack. So it was condemnation of the terrorist attack and the support to the people of Israel. I think that is the least every country should be able to do. I'd also want to ask you about uh, the plan for you know there are we know that the Iraqis have these militias, the Kurds, and 15 other groups. I think each one of them hold a flag and create a group of their own and have this logo and whole thing. I wonder, one thing I must say, these organizations, these terrorist groups have great branding. They've all got a flag, they've got a logo, they've got designs, they've got videos. It's amazing the infrastructure they have. I mean, it's amazing. A lot of these groups have threatened Israel in terms of opening multiple fronts, not just the second front, which you spoke about in terms of Hezbollah. There's a front that these guys are threatening from the Syria, through the Golan Heights, through Jordan, and multiple other places. How do you see something like that happening? How does the
There's also the
government,
West Bank that,
yeah,
sorry,
how does the government and the army fit that into their game plan for going forward?
yes, there is also the West Bank that we have to understand that there are military operations that are taking place during the war in order to make sure that terrorists will not threaten Israel also in this front. There is some rockets that were launched from there as well.
Yeah, yeah.
And this is also
221 people have been arrested from the West Bank since the start of this operation who were affiliated with Hamas. So a lot
yes,
of people who say that West Bank is clean, it's not.
it is not. And they are operating there. And Just recently, the Israeli defense forces was there in order to also, target terrorists that were going to make terrorist attacks towards civilians in Israel as well. So yes, what I can tell you, Adi, is that since the war erupted with the Gaza Strip, the whole army is employed not only in the borders of the Gaza Strip, but also in the northern borders with Lebanon and Syria, because there were already rockets that were fired from these areas to Israeli towns, and also the Iron Dome that is deployed there as well. And we keep open eyes in all borders, whether they are close or far away, in order to make sure that Israel is not attacked in all fronts. But I can tell you that the IDF spokesperson said that Israel has all the capabilities and is very much aware of the different threats that are coming from all these fronts, and yet it has the ability to address them very quickly, because there are soldiers and reservist soldiers that are employed in all these areas that can, that the situation there can flare up very quickly. So as we speak, there are also attacks coming from the Lebanese border as well, whether
Yeah,
it is Hezbollah or Hamas that is employed also in the southern part of Lebanon, and other, terrorist organizations, whether they are Palestinians or other, that are also threatening the stability in the northern border. But the IDF is deployed there and is ready to address these challenges.
I'd like to ask you one more question, Nina. And how long do you see this status of emergency going on in Israel? Of course, there are estimations that this operation, ground operation, which is potentially getting launched anytime, uh, about a month. A lot of people said 2 weeks to 4 weeks, a month. Is there any sort of a clarity on that? And secondly, what are the objectives that these Israeli IDF is setting up for the ground offense, ground operations within Gaza?
So it is difficult to say right now when this war will stop, right? Because we're still in the midst of the war, and there are still, rockets that are fired from different borders, places of Israel. We still have our captives. As we said, more than 200 people that are captive in the Gaza Strip, and we have also to, to bring to their release. We don't know what, there are many uncertainties right now as for the security challenges that Israel has to address. There is also the option of as you said, of a ground operation, in order to fight more, to be able to address um, uh, more, to go from house to house, as we said, that the Hamas terrorists are employed there, and the missiles are also, and other, weapons are employed in civil infrastructures, in order to wipe out this threat. So it is very difficult for now to say whether there will be a ground operation or not, and when exactly the wall will be achieved, because the main goal of the Israeli government right now is to stabilize the situation, to wipe out the threat of Hamas, and bring to the release of our captives.
Indeed. And just a last closing word. When you spoke to people around there, what did they think about how the Indians have reacted to this? Very strongly, I must say. I was quite surprised myself the way the citizens of India actually reacted. Excuse me. So, how do people kind of, what is the perception of Israelis on the ground?
So, we're still very worried about the situation here.
Yeah,
But when we get the unequivocal support from our brothers and sisters in India, it gives us a lot of hope and a lot of strength that Israel is not alone. Israel as a strong ally and a strong friend as India that has its back. You know, the unequivocal support of Prime Minister Narendra Modi was very heartwarming. And I am still getting, calls and messages from many friends and colleagues in India. You know that as a society, we might have divisions in Israel, whether they are political or other divisions. But when the war erupted, the whole Israeli society came together as in order to uh, collect food, to give blood, to collect equipment for the civilian and soldiers that are employed in different borders of Israel, and that they have to address some security threats. There are some people that are taking care of children, of reservist soldiers, and of medical staff in order to make sure that they're doing their job as good as they can, not worrying about their demands uh, back home. So, as a society, we are very resilient, very united, and I am sure that Israel shall prevail.
I mean, on behalf of my little channel, my best wishes, and I hope you the country of Israel is as successful as it has been in its previous military adventures, wherein the enemy has had to back down. And I think that would be a outcome that would be acceptable to people like us, uh, friends, brothers, sisters, and my hopes and prayers stand with the people of Israel in this time. And I hope that things are resolved fast, peacefully, without a loss of life. And if I may just say this, not to Israel and not to anyone else in the region. I think this war or this standoff needs to stop. The Hamas needs to give up its arms, leave the hostages, come down, sit down, go through their punishments or whatever happens to them, and create a viable society. I think that is something which is the end goal. And I hope someday someone up there is listening to us and guides these fools into the right pathway. Thank you so much, Nina, for taking out the time for
Thank you.
talking to me. And I'll stay in touch with you. We would love to get more updates from you as to what's happening on the ground. Thank you so much once again. And Jai Hind.
Thank you.